This week, our technical segment covers a new open source tool written by me and Claude that helps keep your Linux systems up to date and assess supply chain risks. It's called Fettle. It's a pure Python implementation that gives you even more features than we've previously discussed in updating your systems. Then in the security news, the GodDamn Ransomware. CMMC is suspended. Holy Microsoft Tuesday. Lessons learned. Without the internet, do we still get water? The forgotten shims, more than 2 BIOS passwords, cracking firmware encryption with Claude, 1999 called, and it wants its exploits back. Prompt injection for defenders, Grok has your repo, and you're not going to outpatch AI. All that and more on this episode of Paul Security Weekly. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul Security Weekly. Coming to you from the Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul Security Weekly. It is episode number 935, being recorded on Wednesday, July 15th, 2026. I am your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by Dr. Pesci. Dr. Pesci is in the house.
Well, you were paging me to the white courtesy phone right before the show. Yeah, we're getting ready to go on vacation next week, so I had to cook some food for the vacation in the Instapot, and I was like, yes. I'm running late, gotta go.
No worries, good to see you as always. Mr. Josh Marpet is here with us. Josh, welcome.
With all of the internet craziness going on, my Verizon Fios is not acting nicely right now. So, hey, Verizon, if you watch this, it'd be nice if it worked once in a while.
Yeah, and we got the right bandwidth. I have to open a ticket with them. Mr. Lee Neely is here with us.
Well,
Lee, welcome.
I'm here. I have the reverse problem. If I were to try and do this on cellular right here, it would be awful. But fortunately, my Sparklight is coming through for me. So
that's good.
What the heck?
That's good. Couple quick announcements. Before we get started, let's be real. Your scanners are dumping thousands of vulnerabilities, half of them noise, and you still don't know what's actually exploitable in your environment. Patching everything isn't possible and chasing CVSS isn't working. At the Vulnerability Management Virtual Cybersecurity Summit, learn how to prioritize based on exploitability, reduce false positives, and actually fix what matters. Security Weekly listeners can register for free at securityweekly.com/vuln management using the promo code CSS26-SW. I believe myself and Adrian Sanabria will be participating, and that is, we love to talk about vulnerability management. So, Cyber Risk TV is proud to be an official media partner of Black Hat USA 2026. They'll be broadcasting live from Black Hat Livewire Studio with technical interviews covering offensive security, detection, response, infrastructure, and the tools practitioners use every day. Our executive interviews and event momentum packages keep your message in front of the security community long after Black Hat wraps up. Fewer than 10 interview opportunities remain, so visit securityweekly.com/exec, EXEC, today and secure your spot before they're gone. All righty. Let me make sure I click the right things. And
it's more fun when you click the wrong things, though.
I know, right? I've done that before. It happens. So I did a thing, and I wrote a tool, and it's called Fettle, and you can get it on my GitHub. So excuse me, some of the backstory is this is based on, years of Unix and Linux administration where I've written many scripts to help me update my systems. When I switched to Manjaro Linux, I kind of noticed that I was doing the same troubleshooting and entering the same commands over and over again. So I'm like, I need to have a shell script for that. And then as I was updating my systems, I would add to this shell script and go, oh, you know what? Like before, during, and after an update, like I want you to run this command in this way. I want you to check these things. I want you to tell me about this during the upgrade. And then at some point, I fed that script to Claude and I said, go make it great. And Claude started maintaining it. And then on a previous technical segment, I talked about how I added indicators of compromise and AUR package checking to it. And then I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I took that shell script in addition to my Linux supply chain checking script, which runs operating system commands, tells you about your hardware and your supply chain. What if I converted all that to Python? Well, not me. What if I told Claude to convert all that to Python and build a standalone Python tool that basically does all of this for you? Excuse me, the air quality index is like really poor today, some fire or something. So I did that and I iterated a lot with Claude. I did manage to keep it pure Python and just the Lua script inside of this structure. I did use Claude Code to develop all of it, and I found that was really good because I had a lot of source material to build from, right? I wasn't starting with a clean slate where I was like, hey, Claude, like go run me a tool that helps me update Linux systems, because then it would just hallucinate and try and make shit up. I was like, no, we're grounded in the stuff we've built before, and here's my plan of where I want to take it. And we decided to keep that pure Python, so there's no pip install anything. It's just standard Python libraries. I also used AI to do all my Git commits because I hate Git, so did all that for me. I used it to create a logo for it, and I used it to create all of the documentation and something else. It's all basically AI driven, which is pretty cool. I then also built in more features now. So that's largely what I want to focus on is there's basically 3 layers to it, right? There's the maintenance layer. I got to update packages. Oh, and the big feature with updating packages and some of the other functionality is I support Arch Linux-based distributions in addition to Debian and Ubuntu distributions. One of the drivers behind that is I have at least 4, probably more, Ubuntu systems that I need to keep maintained and patched. And so I needed a utility to help me with that. So there is the maintenance, right? It updates packages. It cleans the caches, which is a very important step. And I think a lot of folks that struggle with like, hey, I'm updating my Linux system and things went sideways, right? A lot of people report that. And what I found is if you do some of the pre-maintenance like every time, such as update your package repository and clean the caches of what was there from previous builds, that you'll get a much cleaner process. And so rather than like remembering to run all those commands every single time, I built them into a script. It checks to see what needs to be rebuilt or services that need to be restarted. It reviews that config file drift that I talked about. A new feature that I added, it reports back whether or not you have automatic updates enabled or not. I'm like, well, we do this for Windows. We feel very strongly that Windows should be auto updating. I'm like, Linux has auto update capabilities. Now in Arch Linux, they recommend that you don't enable that. In Ubuntu, it's totally fine. They recommend that you do enable that. And so my tool just like doesn't pass judgment. It just tells you whether automatic updates are enabled or not, which I thought was a nice little security check.
Why does Arch say you shouldn't do that?
What's that?
Why does Arch say you shouldn't do that?
Arch says you should review everything before you apply an update, that you shouldn't just let it go automatically, which I'll get to the other killer feature along those lines. Actually, probably a good point to talk about that. So with respects to maintenance, one of the things that I've been doing is collecting hardware, firmware, and software information using the incsy command on Linux, taking that output, then identifying what my package update would be, right? So sometimes that might just be a link to the announcement of what packages are being updated. And I feed that into an LLM and I tell it, hey, if I go apply this update, is it going to be a good time or is it going to be a horrible time? And what should I do both before and after the update to make sure that I'm going to have a good time? And LLMs will come back and give me a nice little report. And so then I thought, well, that's a lot of work, copying and pasting and all that stuff. I'm like, why can't I just build an LLM integration into this tool? And so I did. So now you can run Fettle. That's the other part I used AI for, was naming the tool. Claude helped me actually name the tool. So Fettle means like find Fettle in good working order, which I thought was wildly appropriate, and I don't think taken by anything else, amazingly enough. So if you run Fettle space upgrade -check, it'll use an API key for Claude. It'll automatically collect your system artifacts. It will automatically figure out what packages and updates need to be applied. It will take that information. It will call the Claude Sonnet 5 API. You can adjust some of these parameters in the configuration file, by the way. And it'll spit back a report based on how I've modified that prompt. I've used this probably 3, maybe 4 times, and it has worked amazingly well. Like the results that it has given me and the advice that it's given me, I'm like, no, like that actually checks out. Like it told me to go run this command. So like I did that, and it told me to watch out for this. And so I did that. And it's like, this might be a potential issue. And I have to say, in all cases, it nailed it. Like it actually pretty shocked me that it did that. I estimate that it costs between 30 and 60 cents per every time you issue the upgrade check command. That may vary depending on the size of the update. But I was like, you know what? I'd pay less than $1 for it to tell me whether or not my update I'm gonna have a good time or not, and tell me how to make it have a good time. And it worked for me. I haven't tested it beyond that. You're probably sick of the word agent, but here's the problem. Your dev team is handing every new agent in your cloud way more permissions than it needs. And when one goes rogue, you've got 4 minutes before your data's gone. You need a default deny button that doesn't break every workload. That's Sunry's Cloud Permission Firewall. Native IAM controls, not newfangled AI nonsense. Default deny on every agent and human identity automatically. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Sunry. That's SONRAI. The other thing it does, of course, is that package supply chain, right? So now for both Arch Linux or Debian-based distributions, it does its due diligence to check the supply chain, to tell you about orphan packages, to tell you about any information about maintainers, any indicators that it has that you might run into some supply chain security issues with your package updates. It tries to do on both platforms now. And then I also built in the system supply chain checking, right? So this is looking at your UEFI secure boot, looking at your BIOS UEFI updates, your TPM, CPU microcode, and just giving you a general report as to what you have and what you might want to look into. So those are 3 major actions of what it does. I talked about what it does for Arch and Manjaro. It tries to do some of the equivalent things. Obviously, AUR is very different from the apt repository, so some of those things don't map. But like rebuild detector on Debian and Ubuntu, it'll tell you which services need to be restarted after you apply the update. It'll tell you about config drift. So I tried to basically match, the functionality. There is a concept of orphans in Debian and Ubuntu, and it'll do that as well. And it'll also support Flatpak and Snap, and give you some insights into those environments as well. So
nice.
I've run it again quite a bit with some great success. The installation is not quite where I want it to be. You do need to git clone it and run it. You also need to manually copy over this init.lua file if you're using Arch-based distributions. And what that will do is run those pre-checks, right? So when I ran it today, there's actually a bug or a misinterpreted design decision, I should say, that was like, basically every time I update AUR packages, I want you to go check and make sure that they're not compromised first and run those checks. And so now it does that through that Lua script hook inside of Yay. So it does that for you and tells you like, hey, yay or not yay. Like you might be installing a package that hasn't been updated for 1,000 days and the maintainer just changed, or you're installing a package and its build file steals all your SSH keys. I want to know about that before I install it.
Why can I only hear like a leprechaun? Fettle, yay!
Yes, Fettle, yay! 100%. So I did clean up a lot of the options. Like Claude like really kind of made a not great user experience, and so I had to spend some tokens just cleaning up the interface. So definitely take a look at the quick start guide, as you can run a lot of different options for Fettle. They'll let you do all the things that we talked about individually, and also the -A command is the one I use, which runs the default set, right? And there's some config options where you can kind of change the default set if you really want to. But Fettle -A is the one that you want to run. That'll perform a system update with all the fixins, right? Mm-hmm. It'll excuse me. It'll clean your caches for you. Now, of course, before it removes anything, it will ask you. It's like, hey, do you want to remove your cache? Like at first, it was just doing that automatically, and I was like, we're actually deleting stuff from the user system. I'm like, we should probably ask them before we delete anything from the user system. I'm like, so make that a prompt. That's fine. There's also a concept of dry run. So if you do dry run, it'll give you a full report like, hey, this is what I would have done had it all been enabled, which is nice. Sometimes you want to use that feature as well. Then it can do, the package supply chain, again, very heavy on the Arch, which we covered in a previous technical segment. And again, it will run some checks for apt, Flatpak, and snap. It'll, determine if a snap has been sideloaded, if it's an unverified publisher, if it has some confinement settings within that snap. Same thing for Flatpak. So we kind of tried to mirror as much of the functionality that we built for AUR into both Debian apt and Flatpak and snap.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else. Oh, and then we have the supply chain audit. So you can run all of the checks, or you can kind of break them down into different categories. And this, Tinter, was based on an Eclipsium supply chain cheat sheet series that I wrote, and the one for Linux. I used that cheat sheet that I spent a lot of time putting together to develop a shell script, which then ended up being in Fettle as pure Python. So it will try and run all of these things. If you don't have the tool installed, it will tell you that you don't have it installed and recommend it. And there is somewhere in here, there is a dependency on what you need to install. It's in here somewhere. I definitely told Claude to create that. It will tell you, if you want to satisfy all of the dependencies, it gives you stuff to install. I don't know where that went, but it's in here somewhere. And then a feature that I'm super proud of and is super useful, because I don't want to go install and maintain this tool on all of the systems that I manage. Like,
of course not.
The systems I manage have SSH. I'm like, why can't we just run this remotely? And Claude's like, yeah, sure. Like, how do you want to do that? I'm like, well, there's a lot of ways to do that. I'm like, what if we just kind of zip it up and send it and then delete it when we're done? And since it's pure Python, as long as Python is installed on the remote host, it should run. It's like, sure, I got you. And it did that. I did, for a brief moment, like a brief portion of a session, I enabled Fable 5. And I then told Fable 5, I'm like, go find bugs and performance and security issues in this code. And it churned for a while, and it came up with a list, created a plan, and then it stopped, and it said, this is a cybersecurity use case. Piss off, you can't use Fable. And I was like, well, screw you. I switched back to Opus, and I was like, hey, that plan that we just created, why don't you go execute that? It's fucking weird. But so it did that. But and so one of the things it found was, it's like, well, you always put, when you upload Fettle, the Python archive, to a remote system, you always put it in /temp, and it always has the same name. If someone were to like clobber that file, they could potentially run system commands. I'm like, okay, fine. It's like, well, Fable recommended that you make a unique file name for it, and you upload it into the user's home directory. So it does that. But you can do this full remote now. And this is a brand new feature. This isn't a feature I had in any of my updated scripts, but I have it in Fettle. So you could actually, this documentation is out of date. I need to have Claude do that. The syntax is actually slightly different. You say Fettle remote, the remote host name, and hopefully that host name is configured in your SSH config file, and you have keys established and all that stuff. And then any command that you want to run in Fettle, right? So it just kind of lets you run Fettle remotely. I've used this feature successfully to update 5 systems. One is Manjaro Linux based on Arch, and the other 4 are running Ubuntu server. And it worked extremely well. It worked extremely well, which is awesome. You can even do the upgrade check remotely, and it will use your local Anthropic key to go check a system remotely. So you don't have to copy your Anthropic key in your config file to all of the systems that you manage. You only have it in one place, and you use the remote feature. So I can say Fettle, remote, a host name, upgrade check, and it will perform that upgrade check on that remote host and actually save those results locally for me using my same one configured Claude API key. I'm using Claude for it. If someone wants to extend it to another LLM, like, that's cool too. I happen to be a big fan of Claude. So remote, well, this documentation is right. That snippet above was wrong. But yeah, it's the the same syntax. And it tried to do that as securely as possible. Again, this is the update checker functionality that I built in. You can actually change the effort, which is kind of cool. So you can change the effort of the Claude model. By default, I'm using Sonnet 5. I think the default effort is high. I don't think the model is configurable, but the effort is. Certainly, this is all open source, MIT licensed. So if you want to send me pull requests or request features, we can talk about that. That'd be great.
Yeah, pull requests are great. Features, you're on your own.
Right. Yeah, you can send me all the pull requests you want. I'm like a lot of my role today is product manager by day, so I know how to say no to features really well.
You want a feature? It's open source. You can go write it.
You can go write it. You can fork it and go write it yourself. It's fine.
Of course, I tease.
Yeah. So it does some things to protect privacy. Because I think someone's detectors might be going off. They're like, oh, you're collecting system details and information and you're putting it into an LLM. That could be dangerous. I do my best to wipe out any hardware serial numbers, MAC addresses, UIDs, anything identifiable to your machine. So you basically just tell the remote LLM, like, the most important things. I'm on this kernel version. I'm on this version of my graphics driver, AMD or NVIDIA. I'm using these graphics subsystems, right? Mesa, Mutter, GNOME, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm on these versions of those things. I'm doing a full system update. Is it going to go badly or not? Right. So that's kind of the thing with that. This says, this is 10 cents to 30 cents for a small upgrade, maybe 60 cents for a large upgrade. I haven't checked my usage credits, but I think that's fairly reasonable. You could, of course, implement a local model if you wanted to and attach this to the local model as well. Nothing wrong with that. And then there is a configuration file, which is nice. And you can define the default actions. You can also define, like, if there's a foreign package, so as a package that didn't come from any official package repo, and this Fettle will actually check for foreign packages because those could be suspect. You can actually say, no, like, I installed this one. I know it's foreign. It's fine. And so you can basically whitelist it. Same thing with orphans, right? Orphans and foreign packages have a very close relationship. This is like orphans are like stuff that was installed as a dependency, but now you don't have the package that installed it as a dependency, so it's considered an orphan. But sometimes things get labeled as orphans that you might want to keep. And so I built in whitelisting functionality so it doesn't bug you every time that you run it. Oh, so you can swap out the model. I haven't tested any other models with it. And so you do have some control. over that, and it implements this in URL lib, so it maintains pure Python. So it doesn't pull in a pip dependency to work with the Claude API. We're querying it directly so that there are no dependencies. That's to protect everyone, myself included, right? The more dependencies you have in your supply chain, the more of your attack surface is on your own system. And again, you can do the dry run. I talked about common options. It does elevate to sudo, but while it's doing that, it will tell you, ask you for your sudo password. So it does try and be smart about how it's elevating, and only elevate if it needs to, and will ask you for your sudo password. What else? That's elevation. I was going to say something else, and then I lost it.
So I had a question for you. You were talking about orphans. What about unmaintained packages you still have lying around?
Yeah, that you would run that I tell
Define
you
unmaintained.
Oh, like something I grabbed a long time ago that's like nobody's touched the code in 10 years.
How long ago?
You know. Okay, 30 years ago.
No. Actually, it's 2 years, and we're working on defining those terms now.
Yeah, no, I'm
just screwing with you.
I got you.
I gotta remember the command line option. I gotta read my own doc. Well, because I changed.
Ask Claude to tell you.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean it's. I mean,
okay.
Identifying those is helpful.
Yeah. Sorry, Lee.
Yeah.
To answer your question, on Arch Linux systems, it is Fettle-A will give you this output, and this will list all of the foreign packages, so packages in the AUR, Arch User Repository, that you have installed on your system, who the maintainer is, how long ago it was updated, out of date, how many votes that it has, or no, I'm sorry, that's the age, and then it'll tell you if it's recently changed or not. Cool. It'll also tell you if it's an orphan, or if it's been flagged by a user that's out of date. I covered this, I think, on one of the previous segments, but that functionality now exists. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happens if you run that on a remote Ubuntu system. I'm trying to think if I'm not giving
run that on an NPM GitHub.
Yeah. I think for Ubuntu, I don't think it does. What does it do? Yeah,
nothing.
It skips it. Yeah, it skips it because it's not supported because it's Debian backend. Because AUR exposes a lot of that via an API that you can query. So I need to probably iterate on that. It's probably some things I can do for Snap and Flatpak packages.
It feels like APT or someplace that has a list of those packages probably does have some list of maintainers, but it's going to be third-party offsite, not local to the tool itself.
Yep.
Because I was thinking about, there's also the how tempting was it to put effectively a YOLO option, just like freaking do it, don't bother me.
Yeah. If you do -- yes, it'll go through and just do everything and not prompt you. Right now, it prompt if the tool you're calling prompts you, it will prompt you. Also, I got the interface a little nicer. It wasn't easy to tell like what Fettle was telling you versus what a tool was telling you. So like if we run it here, if I give you some bigger text. And so the output's a little nicer. I'm going to say, you can clear the cache. I don't think there's any updates. You see it's prompting me for my password. I cleaned up the system and updated it this morning, so we'll see what happens. But when it does the checking, it gives you better output. When it does the supply chain checking. What does it tell me? Oh, I need to update Chromium. Okay, let's update Chromium. Yeah. Let's give you a live demo. So this is just me running Fettle-A on my system. And there's a Chromium update that comes from the official, see how it says end Pacman right there? That's what I was talking about. So that was like Pacman running. And then in between there, it was like, oh, I'm pre-checking 5 AUR packages. There are no indicators of compromise. Yeah.
It switches back to AUR?
Yeah. So it does the official package updates with Pacman, and you can actually change out some of the tooling that it uses, but it does it with Pacman. Then before it does my AUR updates, it goes, hey, there's 5 AUR packages in AUR that need updating. Let me check those against the IOC feeds, and let me check their package build files to make sure that there's no backdoors in them. And it goes, hey, you're clean, you're good. So then it runs yay. Now, if it had found an indicator of compromise, it would have actually stopped and said, do you want to continue, kind of thing. So, and then, yay gives you some output here. And then this is the yay installer. I've got a bunch of updates that came through. I don't want to exclude any, so I'll just click enter or hit enter. And then I can install all of them. I can install some of them. Those all look good. So go ahead and update all of my packages, and then it'll go do that. That's actually going to take a little bit of time.
Still cool.
Yeah. I'm loving this Claude desktop build. I was checking out the repo of the person who maintains it. It's really cool. It's a fork of the official beta version of Claude's desktop. In fact, Untitled Linux Show was talking about this and how they were kind of excited to have a beta version. I'm like, but there's someone on the internet who is not only maintaining the beta version, but taking features that only exist in the official builds for Windows and Mac and getting them working on Linux and including that in a Linux package. And
Nice.
That's the one that I'm using, which is pretty wild.
Now, if they'd only someone out there on the internet would only do the same with the Claude desktop. Sorry, the ChatGPT desktop client for Intel Mac. That would be great.
Oh, check out.
Some of us are still using Intel Mac.
Check out Open. Hold on. Open Code.
Okay.
Open Code is good. So Open Code's kind of like a clone of Claude Code, but you can tie all kinds of other models to it, including local models. You can link it to Claude. You can link it to OpenAI and a bunch of different things. Yeah. So check out Open Code.
Very cool stuff, man. Seriously, very cool.
This is very nice. Yes.
Pretty wild, right? It was a lot of fun to build. I don't know what's next. I think I want to do like a binary releases distribution and a Git runner to automatically build. Something fail, or is that just a warning? I think that's just a warning. No. Error occurred.
Stop! Don't let the dark god of demos overtake you. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
it pulled down a package and wasn't able to build it. I don't know. It's going to tell me what the deal was with that. It's because I didn't run my upgrade.
The idea of doing active supply chain security is fascinating. I really like that part. The idea of going, hey, you're using this package. It's been abandoned for 3 years. Maybe you should rethink using this sucker. And that's awesome. I got to say, I'm really, really impressed.
Yeah, I wanted a more encompassing tool. Like, I know I got to update packages, but like, there's a lot of other things I need to do to make sure that stuff is updated and stuff is secure and secure boot and all that stuff. So it is good. That will conclude this technical segment. Please check it out. The tool is on my GitHub, github.com, /Fettle. Check it out. Give me feedback. Let me know what you want to see next. Let me know if there's any bugs as well. Let's get them fixed. Test it out. Thanks. With that, we'll take a short break, come back with the security news. Stay tuned. Zero Trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny at execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's Zero Trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. And we're back with the security news. Where'd you guys want to start? It's question of the week.
How about at the beginning?
Which story?
CMMC, baby. CMMC.
All right, let's start with CMMC.
Okay.
So my story number my story number 5. I don't know if Josh got any in here, but my story number 5.
We'll take it from there. Yeah. They're all the same. Just on the eve of CMMC not just being implemented as law, already has happened, but being able to be enforced, they have now done a 60-day pause.
Yeah. Josh, step back a little bit. What is CMMC?
The Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC, is the Department of Defense's way to ensure that government contractors, of which there are approximately 300,000, are actually compliant with NIST 800-171. Well, a very customized and stylized copy of NIST 800-171. By the way,
they get their own 871, huh?
They did, and they did something so smart. They locked it at Rev 2. Considering Rev 3 is now there, Lee gave me a funny look. They locked it at Rev 2. Yes, they actually put the controls wholesale into the standard, which means that to change them, you now need to change the law. There is not a reference. Ta-da! Normally, you reference the law to the standard. You go, law, you must follow this standard, whichever is the latest Rev. Mm-hmm. Go look over there for the standard. Cool, works. If you put the control in the law, you now need to change the law to update the controls that you're locked into doing. This was not smart.
No, what could possibly go wrong?
Oh, God. So it's a stylized copy of NIST 800-171. It is also locked to Rev 2. They can't go to Rev 3, which is out and being used. CMMC has 3 levels. Level 1, 2, and I know this is really tough, 3.
Well, they they call them phases, right? That was
no. It's not phases. They're levels. Level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1,
like merchants in PCI levels.
Yes, basically, almost exactly correct. Actually, level 1 is for small government contractors. These people do not have access to what they call CUI, controlled unclassified information.
These are like landscapers.
Literally, that was our friggin' test case.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
And soda machine stalkers. Yes. Because landscapers get maps of the base, and soda machine stalkers get maps of the buildings inside the base.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But those should never be controlled unclassified. Those may have blank spaces that we don't tell the soda machine stalker what's in there, but that's fine. We don't tell him what's in there. Here's where your machines are. That's where you're allowed to walk. That's all you get. That's all you need. That's known as FCI, Federal Contract Information. Federal Contract Information for Level 1 vendors. Remember, kids, there's a quiz on this after class. For Level 1 vendors, Federal Contract Information is all you get. When you start getting CUI, Controlled Unclassified, you move up to a Level 2. Okay? Level 1 is a self-assessment. That is still the same. As of now, everybody doing Level 1 is still self-assessment. But Level 2 is where you have to have a certified third-party assessment organization, or a C3PAO, otherwise known as a diplomatic droid that speaks some... how many languages does he speak?
7 million.
7 million
how
languages.
How many does C3PO pick?
Yeah. And by the way...
now I have to look it up.
So...
But Paul, can you talk to a binary load lifter? Do you speak Bocce?
So CMMC has just been paused. Now, to be clear, the mandate is still there. You're still required to be compliant with this heavily stylized Rev 2 version of 800-171. But the certified third-party assessment organizations are no longer going to be doing assessments.
C3PO is fluent in over 6 million forms of communication. If we remember from the movie.
7 million is over 6. So I'm right. Technically correct, which is the best kind of correct.
Actually. Sorry. Good news. But so they did a 60-day pause. Nobody expects it to come back, as far as I can tell.
So what is the 60-day pause? What does the pause actually mean?
So up until now, you could go get a C3PAO to give you an assessment and certify you that you were actually meeting the compliance. You were compliant with CMMC. You now have that magic gold star that says, thunk, I'm compliant. You don't need to check. You don't need to ask. I'm done. Okay? Those are not going to happen anymore. Why? because they said it's too onerous, it costs too much, it's so bad. Now, mind you, half of the problem comes from the government itself. More than half of the problem.
Yeah.
Because all these
I've seen this movie.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just saying I've seen that movie. Yeah, it is self-inflicted, but that's
contract
the game.
Officers were marking every email, every document as CUI, CUI, CUI. What's the lunch menu? CUI. That's not CUI.
No.
Wait, what is CUI?
Controlled unclassified
information.
Okay.
So this kind of information, it's unclassified, so it's not dangerous in and of itself. It used to be called sensitive but unclassified, SBU.
Yeah, SBU.
And the classic example there was, you read in the newspaper, because it's public information, that Electric Boat just won a contract to build a new class of submarines, okay, for the Navy, right? And then you read in another section of the Wall Street Journal, a huge bid for titanium was just won out of Norfolk, Connecticut.
Right.
And so there's going to be trainloads of titanium going to Norfolk, Connecticut. You go, Electric Boat's in Norfolk. They won a contract for a sub, and titanium's going into Norfolk. I wonder if those subs are going to be made out of titanium. So these are pieces of information that are not dangerous in and of themselves, but if you put them together, they can be.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's CUI. All right. Like in this case, for Department of Defense contractors, I'm a machinist. I make screws. Okay, big friggin' deal, right? You make screws. Oh, these screws go in the F-35. Okay, more of a deal, but still, that could be any of a gazillion different screws. I have the blueprints for the damn place it goes. Oh, now we got a problem. That's classified. But the level before, I make screws for the F-35, that might be CUI. It's controlled, but not classified. Because I don't know where they go. I don't know if this may be where the little flap for the remove before flight tag goes. I don't know, whatever, big friggin' deal. So
I know a lot of people that work at Electric Boat, and a lot of graduates that are coming out of high schools in Rhode Island and other places, other states, have recruited a record number of kids to work, come to work at Electric Boat, which I think is great. They have either here in Rhode Island, Connecticut, like you mentioned.
Well, they just got contracts to build new submarines. They need people to build them.
There's commercials on TV, for Christ's sake.
But so I asked them, right, because I'm curious, and I'm like, so like, why do people get in trouble? Well, how do you control information? And they're like, a lot of it is cell phone usage. And because I guess in a lot of things, if it's not a certain level of classified facility, you don't have to put your cell phone in the locker before you walk in. You can actually keep your cell phone on you, which I'm kind of the opinion, like, maybe you should just not allow people to take their cell phones in, because if, depending on your role, you're doing something cool, maybe you want to take a selfie, or like they're hiring a lot of young kids, right? Take a selfie or take a video of it. And they're like, no. Like, you can't do that. That's not, you can't do that. Then they have to go through your cell phone. But I think that speaks to what you're talking about in terms of how information is classified and compartmentalized in these facilities.
That's exactly correct. And so the problem is that, give me 1 second, Lee. The problem is that with this pause, you've got all these companies that were ramping up to becoming compliant. Look, let's back up one more step. The reason CMMC came around was because when there was just self-attestation for 20 years, the amount of companies that actually did security was a little tiny bit.
Yeah, maybe we do security. These are not the droids you're looking for.
Going back to our C3PAO, exactly. My personal estimate was that 3 to 5% of companies were actually compliant back in the bad days of self-attestation. Maybe. Exactly, maybe. But now you have to certify. And if you don't certify, you don't get awarded the contracts. So you better be compliant. So now the companies are whining and complaining, hey, it's expensive. Well, if you'd done it to begin with, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And I get it, though, because they're like, if I do security, it costs me money. If it costs me money, I got to have it paid to me. I got to charge the money.
Right. But in
my
opinion, Josh, this is very similar to PCI, and I'm not saying, like, I don't want to throw shade or be cynical about it, but I think being a more optimistic, if we continue this program and we keep pushing for it, and we push for it to kind of look like PCI, it will have similar benefits to what PCI has done in increasing everyone's overall security level, because I think the parallels are good, and it might take time. We might need to pause it. We might need to go back to the drawing board and maybe have different revisions. But if you classify your merchants or your contractors in different levels, then you have different standards, or a standard that they have to abide by, in different ways to attest to that standard.
Yes.
Right? You can self-attest, or you have to have an audit, and then maybe there's different levels of auditing. I would like to see similar to PCI. If you're this level merchant or you're this level contractor, you have to have a pen test. If the tools that are used to assess the technology are certified, much like PCI, I think it puts these 300,000 contractors and the safety of our nation in a much better place. It's, in my mind, going to take time for us to get there, but if they follow the model, I think they'll have a very similar positive result to what we have with PCI.
So they just threw that out the window.
Yeah,
and the throw out the window was this 60-day pause, because what they've also stated
is that the kiss of death. A 60-day pause is
it is in this case the kiss of death, because the moment they put the pause in, they also stated they're going to be looking to re-engineer CMMC using this new set of techniques that are basically to speed it up and lower the standards a bit. Now, they haven't said lower the standards. What they said is we want to make it faster, cheaper, easier. This is just too much of a onerous task on the government contracting world. So
and
that's
how many years have we been working on this now? Just to only now decide it's too onerous?
I worked on it. I helped write version 1 in 2021. Okay.
Yeah. And
I was going to say it's about 4 years since.
I mean,
it was talked about when I started at Eclipsium. It was roughly 4 years ago.
So the problem is, go ahead, Lee.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say something silly. So go ahead.
It's been in the works for years. It's been trying to get moving for years. At every turn, somebody delays it. And now that we were literally this close, it was months away from being mandatory in both law and regulations, the DFARS, the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations. Now that they've paused it, everybody who is screaming at their companies, we have to be compliant. We have to be compliant. There's a deadline. There's a deadline. They're never going to be believed again.
Yeah. And the funny thing I'm thinking about this, third party security is a thing right now, right? Don't even think about government. I mean, it's like how many third party compromises have we seen? And in government, you remember that the Wayback Machine about 10, 11 years ago, that little OPM breach, which was a third party security problem with government systems? It's totally appropriate. And oh, by the way, for DoD, they're not the only federal agency that needs their contractors to take care of their data properly, but they're doing some stuff that really is, at least for intervals, very sensitive and even classified at times. And yes, I remember the old Cisco manual. They talked about separating classified and unclassified networks with a firewall rule, which that never happened, particularly back then.
Well, I mean, the best firewall rule would be any for that, just to be clear.
Yeah. No, it's very smooth and non-disruptive.
Wait.
It's got too much latency. Yeah, there, Josh.
Yeah, or the traffic has to pass through a firewall. Remember that one, Paul?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Cable through it. The shoebox with the cable through it.
No, it was an actual Cisco firewall with a hole drilled through it.
Are you serious?
That's a famous Mike Port. Well, famous in Larry and I's mind anyway.
I just couldn't remember whether it was a device or just a shoebox with a hole through it. With the
they drilled a hole in a Cisco firewall. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it passed right through.
Yep. Does the traffic go through a firewall?
I think Josh needed that.
Yes, it does. It's like an air gap network, right, Josh?
Oh, I fucking hate you, man.
So I got to tell you, when two things early on when they were talking about the right codifying in law the security controls. I remember so many regulations when I came through DOE. They would basically say, here's our policy, and at the very end, by the way, and whatever else NIST says.
Right.
So basically throwing the rest of the NIST guidance and regulations into scope, whatever they were at the time, you looked them up. And here they're not doing that. It's like crazy to me. And so I was reacting on that, and then Paul brought up the cell phone thing, and there was a time really when we were working at the lab, if folks couldn't have their cell phones with them, they would not accept the job.
Oh,
and I'm just talking about sensitive unclassified, let alone
Gen Z
classified
today, yeah.
And and there's and believe it or not, for a long time you weren't allowed to bring them out of the car, or if you were whatever, you were in a carpool or whatever, there was the locker that you couldn't even get in the unclassified areas. Then it switched down to just the classified areas. Even to this day, taking a photo with your cell phone is official use only data. You're not supposed to.
There are agencies that have center punches that the official phone comes pre-starred in the camera lens,
Right. So,
well,
it's
I mean,
crazy.
they have to be careful about all electronic devices, right?
Yes.
And it's so like, this device, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, Larry, if you've
This
been keeping
device.
up with the ESP32 happenings. I have not. I've been somewhat disconnected.
Not as much as I should.
Yeah, not as much as I should either. In fact, I don't even know what firmware this is running. This is running the stock. I haven't even flashed this one yet. But Praetorian released yet another Bluetooth low energy tool.
I saw that.
You did see that, right?
Yep.
I guess, Larry, I just kind of want to, like, when we talk about Bluetooth low energy, there's so many tools, so many devices, so many projects.
Yep.
Have you kind of like sifted through that to pinpoint, like?
I have, and it's kind of a continuous type of thing, and that's one of the things that's been kind of terrifying and amazing about Bluetooth Low Energy and Bluetooth Classic, in that Bluetooth Classic was so complex for so long that there weren't a lot of tools. They were very specialized. They were expensive.
Yes. Right.
But Bluetooth Low Energy, as a protocol, simplified it, but two, at higher layers in the stack, became much more simplified. And the tools and the chipsets became, at a low level, became super cheap and readily available, that just about anybody can do Bluetooth Low Energy hacking stuff. And it's
now AI coding tools. We can create new tools.
Totally,
which is great, but it floods the market, right? With all air quotes market, right? Like a lot of this stuff is very inexpensive, and the tools are open source. But
it's very much one of those, like, this is the Sec 617 problem, for the wireless SANS course.
Discussing utility tools.
Thanks, Josh.
Sorry.
Thanks for the AI summary.
But when we absolutely started going, and when we first developed the Bluetooth Low Energy module, this was years ago, we wrote it, and a typical day for the wireless class is about 160 slides.
Mm-hmm.
We had 120 slides just for Bluetooth because we were discussing so many of the really cool tools.
Yeah.
And it was only supposed to be a quarter of the day, and it was three quarters of a day worth of slides. So we had to trim the fat, and so it's an ongoing thing to pick some of the best of breeds, the better supported, the ones with the arguably best features that are reasonably priced and do the amazing things. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
I think today, it's interesting. I think today with AI, when you have this type of struggle or variants of this, it could be like there's so many tools, they all do one thing really well, or they're all kind of have feature parity, or there's a bunch of tools and then like a bunch of people didn't maintain them anymore, so they don't work. In any scenario where I've had some success is you take all those tools, you clone them, right? Ideally, you do some kind of security audit to make sure there's no like prompt injection in there, right? It's kind of scary, but that's your body of knowledge that you start with, and then you use AI and you prompt it and you go, I want to build a tool for me based on my requirements, based on all these other tools, and you create that master tool. For me, that was an internal project. Unfortunately, It's not open source. Hopefully someday it will be, but that was me when analyzing the CVE data, right? Now anyone can do this, right? You can recreate what I did very easily. You can spend a few 100,000 tokens or whatever and built what I built. And the way I built that was, I was like, there are these tools that are used to analyze the CVE data. I like these features. I like that feature. Here's the tool I want to build. And then just start iterating on that with an AI coding agent. And you can build your own tool that's custom to you. I didn't do anything unique. Like analyzing public CVE data, anyone can do it. What separates the wheat from the chaff in that arena is, can you tie it to malware? Can you tie it to threat actors? Do you have your own honeypot and sensor network to feed that data, to collect new malware, to collect new threats, to mark things as exploitable that only you are observing? That's where you go pay a company money, in my opinion, for a much more enriched feed. But if you just want a tool for yourself that does Bluetooth, that analyzes public CVE data, I implore you can definitely go create that yourself. I think we had a question about like how to use AI tools. I feel like I'm still learning. In fact, there was a LinkedIn post by Hal Pomerantz that has forgotten more about Linux and Unix than I will ever know, and still says, like, made a post like basically when Hal adopts a new technology or tries a new technology, he's like, I still feel like a noob. And I love that. And I think Hal would agree. He loves that too. And we make mistakes. Hal makes mistakes. I make mistakes. Yeah, we've got a lot of experience, but this is new to me. So I'm going to make mistakes and do it. Don't let that put you off. It's a learning process. And I think AI works really well. The point is, it works really well when you start with kind of an established body of knowledge with some kind of context or materials that you're not starting from. I think the mistake people make, and the way AI gets a bad reputation, is you're starting from a clean slate. So if you were to just open up a prompt to any LLM today and say, go write me a CVE vulnerability tracker, it would do a terrible job. Right? And so you need to have that body of knowledge and context. At the very least, you need to have a requirements document that you have written, that you have researched and pulled together a bunch of resources and defined what you did. That's probably the first level.
I would even argue, prompt your agent to help you build that requirements document. Give it a good prompt. Have it build it. Iterate on the requirements document a number of times before you start, and then as you're going, it will come up with new things, and you will come up with new things like, oh, that's cool, that's great, that does that. Now let's add some more of these things to the requirements as we move on.
I would argue that actually when you use an LLM to vibe code, it teaches you to understand and break down and decompose the problem better than when you just throw yourself into coding. The prep is better. That's just
Lee's got a comment in there.
So what I was thinking about is on the news this morning, there was a story where a financial analyst was talking about the risks of AI for managing your finance. By the way, they're great at analyzing numbers, but if you give it a business plan, it'll tell you it's okay even if it's not. So I'm thinking, what does your model need to not have it approve the worst idea on the planet? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you know that you're good enough so that you can then?
Yes, it's a fantastic point. You need to understand that the AI technology we use today to build code, let's say, or answer questions, it does not like to say, I don't know.
Correct.
And so when I'm building or prompting AI, I try to build that into my prompts. And I don't just say like, it's okay to not know. I'm like, when you ask this question, ask me what we should do rather than go hallucinate. So I try to get ahead of it and tell it, like, try not to make assumptions. Like, when you get to this part, ask me questions. So one of my favorite prompts, I don't know if other people do this or how great it is, but my experience, I'll say, look, I want you to go do this. I want you to build a plan with milestones, and I want you to build that on this particular problem. And I want you to ask me questions so we can make it great. And that kind of triggers AI to not make as many of those assumptions or hallucinations, as we call them, and go, oh, like I have a design decision here. And if you don't get ahead of it, it'll try and make that design decision for you or answer that question however it can, even if it's wrong. But if you've kind of prompted it to go, no, like ask me what we should do. Now, do I always have the answer? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
That's why there's like an other where I can go, let's chat about this, or defer that decision for later in the plan. Like defer this feature, like in Alaska, like if we do this feature later, like does it matter? It's fine. We can do it later. Okay, great. Put that later in the plan and we'll come back to it. Right. So I think not getting ahead of yourself in prompting AI in that way is the way I at least have had great success with AI.
I will second that, maybe on a little different tact, that maybe less on the building stuff, but some of the things that'll be included at my IoT Village talk at DEF CON is very similar types of things. Is that you're going to build a plan for your pen test. You're going to give it a playbook. You're going to give it some data about the device, and it's going to go and effectively build an assessment plan, and it's going to do a bunch of things. But as a human, we also know that, like, hey, did you think about this thing that may have only been tangentially referenced in the playbook or wasn't in the playbook at this current time, that based on the discoveries that were found, we need to go test this. And it can't necessarily always figure that out. Sometimes it can, but having an actual brain that can extrapolate and some of those types of things are important.
We think differently.
Yes.
AIs, LLMs can think incredibly broadly. They can hold 7 books in memory at the same time. I can't. Okay. Yep. Unless they're like children's books, run, spot, run. But we think over long periods of time. I remember something we did that, the LLM in this session has forgotten. And so I remind them, like, oh yeah, let me check the notes. And oh God, yes. Okay. So we did half of this already, and here's how. That happens all the time.
All the time. And my other advice along those lines, Josh, is when you're prompting an LLM, I stop at certain points and I'm like, this is a good point to stop. I'm like, hey, Claude, I want you to update your memories and what we just did. I want you to update all the documentation. Then I want you to commit, and then I want you to push it.
Yes.
That's the prompt that's
the prompt that saves my, and it'll still, in older sessions, like I was noticing today, I'm like, I think you guys saw me prompt my Claude session I've got going now for work. And I was like, yeah, like go do that. But in that, it was like, it forgot how to interact with the API for our own product. And I'm like, it's like, oh, I want to go, it's like running this whole thing, going to try and test and fuzz the API. I'm like, I gave you the API documentation. Did you? And it forgot about that. I'm like, can you go read the documentation? And then it found like the actual PDF documentation, and then it's still charted. I'm like, no. You have a copy of the Swagger documentation in plain text stored locally, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I do have that. I'm like, go read that, then do what I asked you. And it was like, oh, and it was like it forgot, and I'm like, how did you? Yeah, how it lost that content? I think compacting your conversation, I think sometimes loses that context if you're not really good about saving memories.
Here's a great question, and like we talk about being noobs and doing those types of things. Would this be something that creating a skill for that be helpful?
Yes.
Here's a skill. Create a skill on how to use the API so that it remembers that it has the skill, and we don't have to keep telling it.
Yeah, because skills are great. But you're right. Like, skills are a great point where you can basically save a bunch of memories permanently and go back and reference that. And I've experimented recently with creating skill. I actually published some of my first skills internally for our team. And I think they work really, really well. And I still need to iterate on them, but I'm like, oh,
this is a problem I have because as part of the pen testing stuff, and like you can see a whole bunch of stuff on my desk that building a lab to do a bunch of testing on devices. That like, oh, we give it a serial port. so that it can start to enumerate that. And it every time it has to go figure out how to interact with the serial terminal console.
Right.
And, oh, it's got U-boot. Let's break out of U-boot. And every time it has to refigure out how to break out of U-boot. And sometimes it's multiple times per session it has to figure out how to break out of U-boot because the session has got compacted.
So the amazing part is you can use Claude to create your skill.
Yeah,
and have it iterate on that skill.
I've actually got an answer for you. So a skill.
The amazing part is what I learned is that you can just publish your skill, and if you put it in a GitHub or GitLab repo for your company, you can enable like a skill menu. You can basically tell Claude, all my skills internally for my company are here, and in the Claude CLI or desktop interface, you can go add this as a skill repository, and then you can all share and publish skills within the company. My engineers did this. Give them props at Eclipsium. I work with an amazing team of people at Eclipsium, and they shared this in one of our technical sessions. I'm like, you guys are awesome. I'm like, this is so great. So great.
So I'm going to throw one aspect on that, Larry. There's a combination that I started using, which is I build a skill for a specific task, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, break out of U-boot, okay? But then for a sequence of tasks, I build a runbook. So the runbook is to do these things, use this skill, then do this skill, then do this, and this, then do this skill. So each skill is fairly small.
I need that. Is runbooks like a Claude feature?
I just told it to build runbooks, and it started doing it.
Oh, I need that.
So,
because there's like when we
Claude,
do,
I just said build runbooks. It worked.
I tried to give Claude context on how I write. So I have now a skill that writes as me, which is, I'm still iterating on it. Again, it represents like 2 years of me working with LMs to do that. But there are certain workflows, such as when we discover a new vulnerability. This is what I'm currently working with to have it help. I know it's not going to create all the content 100% right the first time, but oftentimes there's a lot of content we need to create for when we discover a new vulnerability. And those out there that are working in research teams, right? You guys know and gals know what I'm talking about, right? Like I need to do the disclosure document. I need to do a vulnerability advisory. I need to maybe do media questions. I need to write a blog post. I need to track the communications and the disclosure with the thing. I need to have proof of concepts and videos and other artifacts that are associated with it. So I'm experimenting now with AI and how it can help us, one, create all of that content, and two, automatically track that process, because it's a pretty well-defined, anyone that runs a research organization knows that process is pretty similar in the way you track it. There's the point in time when you find the vulnerability, you disclose the vulnerability. There's a set time frame as to when you're going to publicly disclose the vulnerability. There's a whole series of things that needs to happen once it's public. There's stuff like a set series of things, a run book, Josh, to your point, which is why they got me excited, that needs to happen at various points. And that's what I'm trying to build for us. So it's a lot less work, right? We get to focus on what's important in the disclosure, right? The technical research details is important. The communications are important. And having AI kind of help augment that process thing is really great. I do a lot of that at work, if you can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah. Could we tell?
On my list right now. Yeah. It's on my list.
Not that any of us use AI extensively.
Right now.
Yeah, well,
trying. It's not perfect, but other stories that we have. Oh, I want to talk about BIOS passwords for a moment.
Okay.
Did you guys read my article? No, it wasn't mine. My coworker Stas Lyakov and John Lucades, I think both, and Manu, one of my guys in Argentina, all worked on this together.
Is this your story number
10?
10. I thought it was 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
10.
There were others that worked on this with me in the company that I mentioned, but this stemmed from the yellow key bypass, and people started talking about BIOS passwords. And then internally, we started talking about BIOS passwords. And that was a really amazing conversation because I work with people that have worked on UEFI and BIOS long before I even knew what UEFI stood for. They were working on UEFI. So it was an amazing opportunity to understand this. And one of the things that we uncovered was the perception of your BIOS password and the implications of setting or not setting it. And then all of the things that unraveled after that. So like, I want to ask you guys, like, what's your perception and understanding of BIOS passwords? How do you think of a BIOS password?
Well, I usually think of when you say BIOS password, it's the password that prevents you from changing the BIOS values.
Yes, that
as
is one
opposed to
password.
a boot password, which is you have to satisfy that password before the system will boot.
Yes, those are the two most common BIOS passwords.
And then in some universes, people have a BitLocker password, a key, or they might just have a
BitLocker would be.
I don't want to call
control.
it a firmware password, but there's a password you have to enter for the hard drive to be.
Yes, Lee, you nailed it. You could have written this article.
Well,
you nailed it.
The
system or storage password.
I hung out in strange places and had to deal with all three.
Yes,
but
all three. So there are actually
confusing
three.
as all hell. Which one you're talking about?
Okay, so Lee, you could have written this article. You have a command of this subject matter. You nailed all three, right? The one to change password that you need to change your BIOS settings, the password you need to boot the system, and the password to unlock your storage device are three separate independent passwords. And what we learn is that every major vendor calls this something different. I think you alluded to this already, Lee.
Of course,
which leads to a lot of confusion.
I was actually thinking it wasn't vendors; it was humans that called them different things too.
No, it's vendors.
Both. I think it's both. Yeah, but it doesn't help.
So I'll give you the quick rundown. Right. So the gate that gate firmware config changes. Right. So this, to get into your BIOS, Lenovo calls that a supervisor password. Dell calls it an admin password, and HP calls it a BIOS administrator password.
Right.
The password required to boot the machine, Lenovo calls that a power on password, so does HP, but Dell calls that a system password. Then to protect the drive itself, Lenovo calls that a hard disk or NVMe password. Dell calls that a hard HDD or hard disk drive password. HP calls that drive lock. So right there, I was like, oh, this is a blog post because it's so confusing as to how we set these various things. NSA actually has some pretty good guidance to guide you on that, right? Because if we think about this model, we all know people that are super paranoid about OPSEC in their own machines.
Tyler.
And they would probably have all three of these passwords on their systems, in addition to like a USB drive that has to be plugged in order to boot their system that contains the boot. Like the bootloader's not even on the system. The bootloader's on, right? And your bootloader can actually have another password. Tyler. The fourth one, like Tyler. We all know people like that
wipes the system and reinstalls it every 3 weeks, Tyler.
Yeah. So ridiculous. And in certain circumstances, I understand that, and that's fine. But then, like, go to an organization that has 200,000 users. How do you then manage those passwords, and which passwords do you enable and or require for your users? And how does that impact the operations of your company? Operational risk, operational security, IT operations in general. Right. And there are ways to operationalize, like a user usually shouldn't have to get into their BIOS. And there are like enterprise management ways to manage that password. I believe the NSA guidance does not recommend a boot password for like a fleet of 200,000 users, because that would be an operational nightmare.
Also bitch when you're patching and you have to do
Yes, correct. There's 100%. There's a lot of, so basically we tried to write up as much as we could about this topic in this blog post, and then we implemented some rules. So fun fact, I'm actually leading and helping one of the teams, actually more than one team now, at Eclipsium in product management. And so helping them prioritize what they should implement, guiding them on what we should implement in our product. And one of the things we implemented recently was telling you if your BIOS password was set or not, which is pretty awesome. So I am doing that for Eclipsium, which has been a lot of fun. The teams I work with are absolutely amazing. And it's an amazing opportunity for me to go, I think this is more important than that based on my experience and what I'm observing and what I think customers would want. So it's been a lot of fun. I think I kind of flirted with that role when I was leaving CRA and went on to take different roles, and now I've kind of come full circle and I'm back at it. And it's cool that I got to, help us add things like a BIOS password not set. There's also an article from Dell, a vulnerability from Dell as well. And not to pick on Dell, because this exists in a lot of different models of different computers from all of the OEMs. And this is another aspect to your BIOS passwords, plural, is how they're stored. Are they stored insecurely? Can I, as an attacker, either with physical or not physical access, recover that password? So where and how you're storing that password matters and greatly differs. Dell recently had a vulnerability as an example. Again, I'm not picking on Dell, but they recently had a vulnerability that they fixed that was an insecure method of storage and or recovery for that password. I think we've talked on the show before. We all kind of know some of those tried and true methods previously to bypass that BIOS password. Sometimes removing your CMOS battery would bypass that. It would reset the NVRAM that store the password and allow you to reset it. That doesn't always work. There's lots of other methods for recovering that password. One of my favorite methods, my coworker Mickey was telling me about this, and I think has done this, is if you have one model laptop and it has a BIOS password, you go on eBay and you find that exact model laptop and you make sure your SPI flash is the same, like part number, model number. And if the one you got from eBay doesn't have a BIOS password set, you can either image the one with no password and overwrite the one with the password via a physical SPI flash programmer, or you can pop the chip out of the one with no password and pop it into the one with the password, and that's another way to bypass it too.
Remember to lick the chip.
I learned all these cool techniques from the awesome people I work with.
Josh's
chip, very important. Okay, that's how you
gotta lick it. That's
how you get the biometric authentication into the laptop.
Right. Yep. And if you're uncomfortable licking it, get the dog to lick it. Like, it's fine.
Just the same.
Just be careful with your voltage, licking or not licking.
To be honest,
voltage would be bad.
Yeah. What I was most concerned about was making sure that the hard drive was encrypted and you couldn't trivially bypass the getting at it. That was my focus, as opposed to whether we need to have a BIOS password or a boot password. And I realized that, and a lot of it, BitLocker took a lot of stuff, but doesn't do anything for our Linux users. I get that, but
there are BitLocker equivalents in Linux.
Yes, there are.
Yeah,
but for dual boot systems, the BIOS password, the password for a hard drive, the one that's you enter through the prompt there, it works across OSs, but boy, you wind up with bricking a lot of systems.
Yeah. Or not being able to do some type of recovery in a lot of those.
It's really risky. I'm glad you guys mentioning password managers on this stuff, because you oh man, have you got it.
There are. I didn't research them extensively, but there are ways to manage, because you don't want the same password on all of your BIOS, passwords for your entire organization, and there are enterprise ways to help manage that. I didn't dig into a lot of exactly how that works, but there are ways to do it.
Hey, it's the same password as my luggage,
right?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Or in the Bluetooth example, 0, 0, 0, 0.
Yeah. So
6 zeros.
6 zeros. 6 zeros.
Well, Bluetooth Low Energy is 6 zeros.
Yeah, 6 zeros for Bluetooth. Spaceballs, it's 5.
Right.
So
Spaceballs, the flamethrower. Okay, anyway.
Did you guys see the
kids love it?
The uncovering of the Russian state actors that were targeting Cisco devices and building a botnet, and there was an alert issued from.
No, which story of this was yours, Paul?
So it's my story number 8.
That's every decade for the past 30 years.
But so there's a couple of hilarious things about this article. So my story number 8, finding the routers energetic bear is looking for. there's a Security Boulevard article where both myself and John Strand are quoted in that article commenting on this. Ironically, John actually called me this week, and we haven't chatted in some time. I sent him a text over Saul's article. I'm like, dude, you calling me and us being quoted in the same article, I feel closer to you than I have in like a year or two. This is amazing. I love it. But there was an alert issued based on this. On July 9th, the NSA and 18 other domestic and international cybersecurity agencies jointly published Improve Router Hygiene to Protect Against Russian State-Sponsored Targeting. So the technique, as Captain Obvious would say, isn't sophisticated. They scan the internet for Cisco SNMP services on port 161, guess the default public community string, and use legitimate config copy functionality to pull the running config, which hands over the credentials, internal addressing, routing relationships, and the like. They also targeted Cisco SMI or Smart Installer, which is the basically setup mode on your router that has no or very little authentication and can be exploited very easily. And this is why I came up with the quote, like 1999 called, and it wants its air quotes exploits back, because these are things on Cisco routers specifically that we've been talking about since about
forever.
I'm thinking, I was trying to figure how far back we've been saying don't do frickin' smart install.
I want to say I was in college, so it was between 1995 and 1999.
I was going to say 30 years.
Yep.
30
when we
years.
got when we got the first Cisco router, and there was actually some debate, like, do we get a Cisco router or do we get a router from someone else? And everyone was like, well, even in the late 90s, everyone was like, well, a lot of people are trained up on Cisco. It's kind of the standard. We should just go with Cisco. Like, no one gets fired for buying Cisco.
But Cisco, yes. No one ever gets fired for buying a Cisco. Yeah.
So we had a Cisco router. And, like, even at that time, I was like, we shouldn't expose SNMP. We shouldn't have default SNMP string. This has been, like, a security issue and control that Cisco has advised against, that we've understood since the 90s, which I feel like wasn't a very long time ago for me. I still feel like that was
30
like
years,
but it was like 30 years ago now. And so now in July of 2026, we're still addressing the same goddamn issues. Like, what the fuck is going on? I read this article. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening now. And we think, oh, like, how do we detect this? I'm like, hold on, like, let's back up. How about we don't expose Cisco routers to the internet in configurations that Cisco and all of us in security, before there was even like full-time jobs and a lot of full-time jobs in security, we've been telling people they should not do on their Cisco routers. Like, this is just I can't even believe we're having this conversation right now. And these two features, SNMP and SMI, are two things. Like, you should use more secure SNMP. You shouldn't have SMI. You shouldn't expose it to the internet. Now, hold on. Last thing on my checklist is that, like, if you're initiating a TFTP transfer of your config file for your Cisco router over the internet, like, you should not allow that traffic to happen. You should not configure. Again, like, I was working with Josh Wright in the early 2000s to write hardening Cisco routers. I was working for Brown University at the time. We had a lot of Cisco gear, and I helped them secure all that Cisco gear. And this is the early 2000s that we were advising against
doing stupid shit.
At SANS classes back when I could smoke a cigar in the lobby of a hotel in New Orleans. That's how long ago this was. I was advising people not to do this shit on their Cisco routers.
Right. Back when we were doing TFTP boots, that's when we were using that to boot our diskless workstations, and we weren't freaking doing it over the internet, but it would work. But also at that time, the reliability of those WAN connections wasn't what they are today. So
but
odds are the stability would kill you.
Russian hackers are sipping on vodka, eating caviar, going, you know what? It's almost 30 years old, but I bet you if we scan the internet for SNMP and SMI stuff, we would find stuff where we can compromise people.
Boom.
And the other Russian hackers are like, no, I'm not going to do a Russian accent because I'm terrible at it. But they're like, no way. No way that still works. And they're like, yep, it still works.
No, Yuri, no way.
Yeah, yes.
Yuri.
Ironically, Yuri is the name of our CEO and co-founder. It's Yuri.
As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to need 2 wives.
Look, let's be honest. The only thing
I am the machine. Oh no, wait, that's a different.
The only thing we're missing is Jeff Mann telling us that they were telling people not to do it in the 50s, okay, or something like that. Like, this is
back when Jeff was a
shit
pen tester 50 years ago. Yeah, he was exploiting these vulnerabilities to gain access to. Not that he.
Why are people exposing SNMP to the internet? SNMP hasn't even been invented yet.
Be careful what you target, Reagan. Some things don't work well to SNMP.
Oh God!
Wow.
I'm absolutely even talking with you guys about this in this entertaining way, which is it's hilarious, but also it saddens me that we're having this conversation now.
Yeah, I mean, why do those features even still exist in a Cisco product, right? And I know the two word answer is backwards compatibility, right?
Yep, legacy.
Legacy, yeah. One word for the win. But sometimes you got to pull the plug on those.
Wait a minute. Is there still a 486 buried in every x64 computer?
Uh-oh.
Holy cow, that's a frightening thought.
But hold on. I want to go back to Lee's comment, though. Why is this feature enabled by default? Why is this feature
Is it enabled?
I want to say, in my experience, Larry, it's a great question. SNMP has been enabled by default on Cisco routers more often than not. And I liken this back to my first experiences with Linux in the same time frame, talking late 90s, Red Hat 5.2. You can go look up when Red Hat 5.2 was released. Red Hat 5.2, I stood up a Red Hat 5.2 box on my cable modem network, and it was compromised almost immediately, and it was used to distribute wares. And largely because they enabled a whole bunch of services by default. And very quickly thereafter, many Linux distributions, Red Hat included, stopped enabling all of these services by default. Why hasn't Cisco followed suit and not enabled SNMP by default? Because if you're managing a large fleet of routers, you're certainly capable of enabling this service, and you should be enabling it securely with SNMP v3, with proper password hashing and the like.
On modern Cisco router firmware, SNMP is not enabled by default. Yeah. Let's see here.
Yeah, so that's good news.
Yep. So that means two things. In the particular cases of these thousands of routers with SNMP enabled on the internet, that someone has actively enabled it, or these are legacy devices.
Right. Legacy. So Red Hat, so just for the record, this is how old I am. Red Hat 5.2 was released October 20th, 1998.
That's when it first came out?
That's when it first came out, and that was my first box that got hacked.
Oh, you'll like this one. Hold on. I got to move something here, but I can do this. Keep talking. Talk amongst yourselves. This will take me a moment.
Talk amongst yourselves.
I was at a friend's house.
I think we beat that one to death.
I actually had.
You had some stories.
Yeah, I actually thought we might want to take I have one that I want to poke Josh over, but before we go there,
the water. Can we talk about the water flow?
That's actually where I was. That's exactly where I was going.
Hold on, let's just go back to Larry for one moment. Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 2.1. Is that what it says?
Yep.
Oh, way.
Yeah.
It's still got the floppies? Where's that CDs? I'm trying to think.
2.1? I don't know.
It's CDs.
No, really? We had CDs back then? Did we?
We did.
Yep.
2.1
We
would have
did.
been 90.
Oh, even better. I can't tell
Four?
because it's still sealed.
Wow. Red Hat Linux 2.1 was released in November 1995, with sources
God.
citing either
So
October 21st
this
or
is specifically this is Red Hat Linux Advanced Server, so it's not necessarily
That was the expensive one.
Yep. Red Hat
Wow.
Linux Advanced Server, and
Larry,
the
you'll get a kick out
CDs
of
are
this.
still sealed. They're still sealed.
Wow. Where did you get that? Did you?
Somebody's basement.
No, I think it was at like an old job that they were clearing out stuff, and
Yeah, well, you want to see the router I was installing in 1989? Look up a Cisco AGS Plus.
Oh my God, no.
Yes,
man,
I
you
installed a
hurt
pair
me.
of them.
all right. And
But anyway,
to make it even older, I'll give
When
you
was
this one.
Cisco? I think I've looked into the.
When are you going
history
to
of
pull out
Cisco.
NetWare 2.17?
I gave a
OS2
copy
Warp.
of that
Boom.
to my father-in-law, still sealed.
Yeah, that one appears to be sealed.
Yep, OS2 Warp
I
version
ran
3.
that as my workstation in the 90s when I was in
That was one of the
college, by
strongest
way.
operating systems out there,
It was
bar none.
friggin' awesome.
Y2K ready.
Yes, 100%.
Oh.
CDs.
Cisco Systems was founded
Floppies.
in 1984.
God damn.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
are we ready
Wow.
to get wet?
Let's
We
move
went-
on.
Yes,
Let's
let's
move
get
on.
wet.
We went in the
get wet.
Wayback Machine. Oh, will the water still flow? This is our good friend Josh Corman.
Yeah.
Undisruptible 27, baby.
And I mean, it was an awesome experience. They're getting all these water utilities to get into DR testing, and they had two.
Did he do this
scenarios.
in San Francisco or Vegas or New York or something?
I'm trying to remember.
I read a LinkedIn post about this, Lee, which is how I learned of it.
What, of Undisruptible 27?
Of Josh Corman was behind this. We should have had him on the show. Josh is a good friend of the show and a good friend of mine, an amazing individual. But
I'm supposed to talk to him this week. Can I invite him on the show?
yeah, absolutely. He's always welcome. But he got together. This story isn't loading for me.
So I
Yeah,
can
it's
tell
not
you
loading
about,
for me either.
I can tell you
tested it
about
the other day.
I can tell you about it. I actually sat with him and he took me
Wednesday,
through his whole
July 8th.
presentation.
Yeah, they were in some like major city. And from what I understand, and I read this briefly on LinkedIn, I occasionally try and keep up with my LinkedIn feed and just see what's happening with my friends. It's amazing. It gives me information about my friends and what they're doing. I saw posts from Casey Ellis and Josh Corner, like all kinds of wonderful people that I'm friends with. But they went to some major city. They brought water utility companies there, and they ran some kind of simulation that was like, if the internet went down, would we still have water? So I'm not sure of any other context around it, but like the fact that Josh Corman was involved, I was like, well, this is real. Like, we're going to learn real things from this, and hopefully get better as a result, right?
Josh, you got more context on this?
Yeah, I talked to Josh Corman about his new initiative. It's called Undisruptible 27. It's interesting. He's not going after cybersecurity. He's going after engineering. What he's saying effectively is that if somebody attacks a small water utility, and remember how small these water utilities are. Remember the one that had TeamViewer, where they were raising the sodium hydroxide content because they broke TeamViewer? Like, these are utilities that don't have any money for security. Okay. And he said, if they were able to hack the pump that pumps the water up to the water tower for nighttime flow and everything, what if they could turn it on and off 30 times a minute, every second or two? They'd burn the pump out, because you're not supposed to turn them on and off fast, right?
Right.
So he said, for $50, $100, whatever it was, for a minuscule amount of money, you can buy a relay that has a timer in it. Basically, it only allows you to turn it on and off every 5 minutes, every 7 minutes, whatever it is. Okay, it slows it down. He said, what about water hammers? Because I don't know if you know water hammers, but water hammers are evil. It's the pressure of the water. When you open a pressure valve, If it hits the water that's in that pipe already with a lot more pressure, all of a sudden at the other end of the water's incompressible. This is hydraulics. The other end of the pipe, the next valve, gets bam, and it may not be designed for that.
That's physics, right?
It's physics.
Object
So it's
in
going to
motion
break the
stays
valve.
in motion until acted upon by some force, right?
Right.
So he said, how about if we put $20 valves, $50 valves, minuscule in the scheme of things, that are pressure release valves, so the water hammer just gets dissipated. Okay?
Right.
So he's doing an engineering thing. He says, look, if the internet goes down, a lot of these things will still work to an extent. But if the internet is up and somebody hacks you, you could go down permanently. Like as in you'd have to rebuild from scratch. So he's working on an engineering first methodology to help these small water utilities. And as a matter of fact, I have a personal stake in this because I'm trying to help him by building out a set of pieces for small water and electric utilities that have no budget, just as guides. Here's what you can do. Like CISA has a free scanner. They'll do free external vulnerability scanning. And Dragos has a free, if you're under $100 million in revenue, Dragos has a free utility for you that'll scan all of your packets internally and check them, things like that. So I've built out a guide for all of these small water utilities. I'm trying to help Josh. That's the reason I'm supposed to talk to him this week.
Yeah. So, this was actually a really cool scenario, and like I said, they had two options. They had a tabletop, or let's actually cut the connection and go. Of that, well, only one attempted to do that, and then a bunch of like three others have said we'll get to it soon. But I was in a DR planning training class once, and so I remember somebody standing up at the beginning. When do I get to pull the power switch and see if we can survive? Was essentially the question, right? When do I get to start kicking cables? And the instructor's like, timeout, not yet. But this is, how do we get people where they're ready to tick the cable and see if they can survive the actual outage? And also, I think, given the scope, they're also challenging your assumption on how much supporting infrastructure is online while you're trying to run your shop. I mean, because they talked about no SMS, no cell service, no internet. Can you run without all those external dependencies? Oh, by the way, it's bloody hard to do that, let alone test to do that. It can be expensive. I mean, Josh, your point about a small utility, to build a parallel environment to try this, because you don't necessarily want to turn off the water.
Right.
Details.
Yeah.
A lot of that comes to
It's
tabletop.
okay. We'll just
table,
unplug it and plug it back in. It's okay.
Tabletops are important, and I think Doug White has come on the show and talked about tabletops in disaster recovery. Emergency response environments are critically important to understanding. We've used tabletops, I think, pretty successfully in enterprises. Like, okay, great, like this thing got hacked and you do this, but like, what if you don't have that? What if you don't have that? What if you don't have that?
Yeah.
And it highlights that it surfaces to the top those areas where you have to have more redundancy, more fail safes, better backup communications and things of the like.
Yes. Yeah. But it's not the end game. When the old cliche, practice like you play.
Identify the issues, then you have to go fix them. You're right.
And then you have to actually have a chance to do it. I mean, when you hand somebody a pile of hardware and a pile of, air quotes, tapes and tell them go rebuild a domain controller or whatever.
Yep.
That's when it gets real.
Yep.
And I worry that we don't do that very much. And I remember the first time doing that. It was freaking hard.
Lee. Okay, I talked to a lot of different companies.
Mm-hmm.
How many companies do you think have actually done a proper restore test of their backups in the last year, let's say? Not even the last quarter. Let's say the last year.
Can I count it on less than one hand?
You could count it by... Never mind, I'm not going there.
A backup is only as good as the restore process, right?
Yeah.
And if we're not testing the restore process, you don't really have backups.
Josh, that number is...
They have a checkbox.
That number is greater than -1 and less than 1.
Yeah. And I think part of the issue is, it used to be, it was a real concern when we were all insourcing, right? But now that we've got things outsourced and a lot in the cloud,
I agree.
It's someone else's problems, right?
I almost think it was, Leo, to your point, I almost think it was better when we had what was the iron company? What was that called?
You mean Iron Mountain?
Iron Mountain.
Mhm.
When we had Iron Mountain, right? And we physically had to back up the tapes, and we physically had to have someone with a truck to come pick up the tapes. And if you needed to restore from a backup, you had to go file a thing. I don't know. Was it paper? I think it might have been in 2001-ish time frame for me. It might have been paper. I had to go fill out a piece of paper and go, I want to retrieve this backup from this system from this date. And Iron Mountain would go deliver it back to you, and then you would have to go restore it. And you didn't want to test that process because it was a pain in the butt. But that was the process.
Fun fact. For many years at a previous company that I worked for when we were in healthcare, I was on the authorized list of people that could actually pick up tapes in person from the Iron Mountain facility.
Nice.
Because I only live less than a mile from our nearest Iron Mountain facility where all of our tapes are sent. Like, so if they needed someone to go pick up, it was, Larry, go pick this up in the morning on the way to work.
Oh, this is so nostalgic how things used to work.
So
right?
It's.
I remember it was grandparent, parent, child, tape rotation schema, and you had labels and markers, and somebody's job, whoever was the intern, would pop tapes out every day, and God,
that was my first job in tech. By the way, I tell my kids this story all the time, and I've told it on the podcast before, but now that we're talking about it, it bears repeating because I literally started at the bottom in computers.
You had $20 in your pocket. You're gonna go pop some tapes.
I was hired. I was still in college, and I was hired as an intern. But my kind of sub label was called a bub. I was the bub. And the bub was short for an acronym for backup boy. Yeah. And your first job was to go around. My first job was to go around to every developer workstation. It's about a dozen or so developers. And they each had a physical backup tape. And this was like, it was before USB, right? I don't even remember what the interface was. It was serial, SCSI, I don't know, whatever. SCSI backup tape, right? It was a physical thing. And I would have to put a tape in, and then I would have to turn the mechanism or clip on the front. And the funniest part is a lot of the plastic like levers had broken off. So I had a pair of vice grips, and I have to grab the metal knob after the thing broke off and turn with the vice grips, and then run the commands on the system to physically back up the code that they wrote for that day and save it to an external backup tape. And that was my job, and my job was called a bub. And so when I tell my kids and other people, like,
backup boy,
getting into, and whatever field it is you're getting into, it has to be technology, I'm like, don't be afraid to start at the bottom. I'm like, I literally started at the bottom because some of my kids' friends and everything are like, oh, like, you have all these computers and monitors and all these computing gadgets and stuff. Like, I'm like, you don't forget, like, I started at the very bottom in my career. I think it gives you a great appreciation for everything that happened in your career. So I was literally the bub. Backup boy.
Score.
Backup boy. That is hilarious.
So the story I wanted to troll Josh with was my number 4. EU takes member states to court over unimplemented cybersecurity law.
Oh, I didn't see that one. What's it? Tell me more. Tell me more.
So troll him more.
Yeah. So, a couple years ago, they came up with the NIS2 directive, which they were supposed to translate into law. And as of right now, there are 4 countries which are more than 28 months late. It's Spain, France, Ireland, and the Netherlands. And I think they're not alone, but they're the big ones. They haven't done anything. So the European Commission is going to try and fine them. The problem is that the European Commission fines have a tradition of not being paid. So the only one that's close to an implementation plan is Ireland is about to pass their, I'm looking for the name of it. They have a set of regulations there that are supposed to go and be finished by the end of this calendar year. They're still 20 months late. but they are going to do something. So I'm looking at this from a couple perspectives. I mean, they're trying to create some EU-wide, and this actually is a foundation that other things are based on.
Like the EU CRA, I think, is based on NIS2.
I think that's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to check.
And so, so the idea was to, qual rock run or whatever, build, right? Don't start up here. Start with the basics and work your way up. But if the leverage is a fine that doesn't get enforced, I'm not sure you've got a sufficient stick, and I don't think there's a carrot out there.
Well,
you with me?
So
this is where I was going. Oh, Josh has got to eat this up.
I think there is a carrot because the European Union is multiple countries working together with no taxes, no tariffs, no whatever in between the countries, right?
Yeah.
Now, EU CRA is a product-based law, and I work in that space extensively in my work at Finite State. And NIS2 is an organizational law. In other words, is your company, your enterprise, your organization secure and compliant? Okay.
Yeah.
So they're not the same, but they're definitely kissing cousins, And if you don't follow NIS2 for your organization, then how do I let your organization do business in other countries inside the EU? That's the question I would be asking. I would say, that as the European Commission, the EU Commission, that's the question I would be asking is, sorry, we're not going to issue you a business license to work in, if you're a Spanish company, you're not meeting NIS2 and your country is not meeting NIS2 or not mandating NIS2, you can't do any work in Germany. You can't sell anything in Germany. You can't, now that might not care. I'm a local bakery. I'm a whatever. I don't do anything outside of Spain, but to any company that does something outside of Spain or the Netherlands or whatever those 4 countries are.
Right.
I would say that would be the stick. The carrot would be you get, tariff-free, tax-free, obstacle-free trade with all these other countries. That to me would be the carrot and the stick in one and the same. But yeah, NIS2 has been around forever and a day, man. Like it's been around for...
Yeah, the deadline was 20 months ago, right?
Yeah, I think it's been around for like 10 years, roughly.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm like, what the hell? I mean, I'm thinking we've been talking about, rescinding our ability to do stuff like well before now. So, but I found it very interesting. Oh, and Ireland is working on it, but it's like, man, I got the impression when I was looking at that, those were not the only 4 that was like the majority of the...
No, there's a lot of countries that don't have it in an official legal sense, like you will be NIS2 compliant. But part of the problem is that NIS2 has, if I remember correctly, another 24-hour notification requirement, similar to EU CRA. So it's basically like if you have a breach, you've got I don't remember the specifics, but if you have a breach, you've got 24 hours to notify people, which is define a breach, define when I find out I have a breach, define what that means, and define 24 hours. I mean, we know what 24 hours is. Define. Except here in the US where daylight savings time is now gone, or it's going to be gone. We don't know.
And define when that 24 hours starts.
Yeah, and actually in the U.S., it's not that daylight savings will be gone, and we won't be switching away from daylight savings times anymore.
My apologies. Thank you for correcting me.
So the reason I bring that up is because as a state, you could opt out of daylight savings time and remain in standard time, no problem. Several states passed regulations where they wanted to opt into daylight savings times only, and that requires an act of Congress to approve.
Oh my God.
Whereas the other, they could approve locally. So, but they said, but we really need that extra hour. So it was like, so you deliberately picked the hard way to get out of this stupid clock change thing twice a year. Is my cynic side showing there? But okay, so now there's been enough hue and cry. They're going to try and get legislation through the Senate to that effect. Trump has already said if that gets through the Congress, I'll sign it.
This is the important issue of the day? Okay, fine.
Yeah, well, just stop looking over there at that Gulf and stay in our country, okay? So anyhow, and never mind the funding they're talking about sending to a certain country in that area that's been an ally of ours. Let's just leave that all alone. That's not important.
Don't even get me started. But
I won't.
What would be more important?
Let's wait. Hey, you know what? I could change the topic and talk about the guy who worked at Digimint.
Go for it.
So they've got a sentence now for what's his name? Digimint, who was the ransomware negotiator, but he was playing both sides against each other, and his customers lost like $75 million. He's been sentenced to 5 years, and some future property claims, probably less time served. And I'm like, is this really going to make these guys that are out 75 million whole? But that's what the court decided.
And remember, he's probably got 30 million, 10 million, 20 million in crypto hidden. So he's going to get 5 years and be like, thank you, and retire.
They did try and seize his crypto, but he had spent it. Yeah, so I'd like Tyler's take on that one.
Yeah, he tumbled it.
But what the interesting thing to me was, I mean, this is just interesting, kind of like, that doesn't feel like the crime matchup. But the other thing, it turns out, this guy was doing nefarious illegal stuff before Digimint hired him. In other words, they didn't background check this guy who was going to be in a very sensitive role. And shockingly, he did the same thing again. I'm like, wait a minute. Background checks? Verifying people don't go bad? I mean, remember HRP programs? I know that's redundant. Where you regularly make sure. I mean, this is the thing. But I've got a weird background, right? I'm used to that kind of stuff.
We all have
make sure people don't go bad.
It's interesting because
not to downplay your background, Lee, but
no.
And I appreciate
it's totally
that we all
cool.
have weird background. I want to before we conclude.
Anyway,
though,
sorry.
Yes,
but
Microsoft
story number
patches.
3.
Oh, Microsoft patches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hit my story number 3 because it segues nicely into Microsoft patches.
Agreed.
Okie dokie.
AI compresses the vulnerability lifecycle to hours. Deepak Gupta, I recognize that name, but I think it's a common Indian name, and I might be getting it confused with other people with the same first or last name, right? But I think it hits on some really good points here. And it was interesting when I was prompting Claude to analyze this article. I was like, the first part is stuff that we've talked about, in that AI is finding more, the thing we've talked about a lot. Mm-hmm. AI is finding more vulnerabilities. Companies are patching more vulnerabilities. They're issuing more like, I get that. And he summarized it nicely. I thought where it really shines and gives us some nice talking points is the latter part of the article, which is where I've been trying to focus us on, is what the hell do we do about it, right? Like, how do we... like, we're receiving this in Microsoft Patch Tuesday, and if you notice, a lot of other vendors, Avanti, SonicWall, Fortinet, the list goes on, NVIDIA, have all released patches in or around or in the same day as Microsoft Patch Tuesday. We're inundated with patches, largely because of AI. But then, like, what do we do about it, right? And I love some of the points that were highlighted here, and Claude, I thought kind of summarized this point really well. Not every system deserves the same ceremony. I love the word ceremony here, because it's a very good, awesome English word, right? Mm-hmm. Because we talk about ceremonies in agile development. Right, agile development has a very specific set of meetings that we call ceremonies, which I love. Right, there's like your sprint review, your sprint planning, and your sprint refinement are all like these ceremonies that you have where you talk about basically what you're working on, what you should be working on, and what you worked on before. Right, and those are ceremonies. And I think in the patching sense, ceremony is a very good word, because you've got all these different systems. They're all different types of systems, different configurations, different risk postures. And so the ceremony is different. If I have a vulnerability in any type of system, it's different. And we need to treat that differently. We need to prioritize that differently, because the huge takeaway for me on this one was something that actually Claude pulled out that I agree with. Not everything that Claude writes I agree with, but this part I did. You're never going to outpatch an AI that finds exploits in hours. So the honest answer is stop betting everything on the patch race and put more weight on catching what's compromised, what a compromised system does after the fact. That's a strategy that survives even when the patch window keeps shrinking. Like, right? Like drinking, shrinking. We all have to drink based on this too, because it's a harsh reality. We're not going to keep up with patches.
Right.
We've never been. The interesting part is we've never been able to keep up with patches. Now that we have AI, it's a losing friggin' game. And we need to double down on, is my system compromised? And answering that question it's a different ceremony. It's a different set of actions. It's different work than, is my system patched and how can I get it patched? Because you're just not. That window has shrunk to such a small margin. And I think the M Trends report was just released basically stating the same thing, backing us up. Mm-hmm. You don't have, there's no longer a luxury of time. Like, let alone measuring time, there is no longer time to apply a patch. Because by the time you get to applying a patch, your system more than likely has already been compromised. So the game now turns to prevention and detection and response, right?
Yep.
Not so much in the prevention stage. It's detection and response now.
So actually, but your Claude summary, aside from tiering things, and really did a nice job of what I have said a bazillion times, not as well, is it also talks about compensating controls to help the prevention out, things we can do.
Yes.
And it's easy to omit that in this conversation, is to make sure you've got compensating control, to put the RASP and the WAF in there. I'm not saying they're the be-all to end-all, but it's important to remember that. But system
hardening, too. System hardening is something we've harped on, Lee, since like the 90s. I mean,
before you had kids.
We like wax nostalgic in a lot in this episode, right? But one of the things we talked about was
fixing hamburger
hardening.
menu.
Like, how am I configuring my system to lessen the probability, one, that it's exploited, and two, that an attacker is going to be able to do something once they've compromised the system. That's what hardening not just reduces your attack surface, but reduces the attacker capabilities. And I'll go to something like FortiBleed as an example, in that you had to not only keep up with patches, but there's a lot of system hardening that you could have done to reduce that attack surface. And some of that is limited by the vendor. Could have. Hopefully you did. Like, I would like to see the restriction of what commands could be run. Like, can an administrator turn a Fortinet device into a passive network sniffer? I would greatly restrict that capability in my system hardening guidelines. I would also, in a detection sense, want to know every time an administrator has done that, because it's a very least frequently occurring event, only happens in certain troubleshooting scenarios. I want to know if that happens. Even if there's a possibility of a false positive, I think we kind of get too hung up on, well, there should be no false positives. Not necessarily. False positives are okay in moderation, much like everything else, a lot of other things in our life, right? It's okay in moderation. Like, oh, yeah, we were troubleshooting something, and part of that troubleshooting was we had to do some passive network sniffing. Like, that should be a less frequently occurring event. And if it throws one false positive in 2 months, okay, fine. Like, I look at that and I go, oh, no. Like, Dave on our sysadmin team had to troubleshoot this thing. It was a big event, had to do passive sniffing. Then you fast forward the next 2 months and you're like, wait, there was no huge troubleshooting scenario that happened, but yet our Fortinet firewalls were passively sniffing a list of 13 different protocols.
Are you joking?
That's something that that's exactly what the attackers did. If you look at the command they ran from Fortibly, they were passively sniffing 13 different protocols off of your Fortinet firewall. I want to know when that happens, because I can't patch my way out of it. That was my whole thing when I wrote about Fortibly. So, you're not going to patch your way out of it. Your initial access vector may not even rely on an exploitable vulnerability. It's going to rely on credentials. And by the way they collected those credentials was through passive sniffing. So we need to flip the script, right? Like, hardening needs to be even more of an emphasis today, and detecting attackers living off the land has to be a priority. And the only way you do that is living with some false positives and observing behavior on your systems. And that's what's going to get us there. It's not going to I agree with Deepak. It's not going to be patching. I think the things that he recommends in this article are pretty sound.
I want to ask a question real quick. If you think 30 years ago, because we've been talking about that a lot this session, how much more customization and patching of servers did you do back then versus what system administrators do today? Do you think they do the same amount of customizing and patching of servers as we did 30 years ago? Hardening. Sorry, not just patching. Hardening of servers. Customization and hardening of servers.
I don't know. It's an interesting study, Josh.
I don't know the answer, but that's my point. I think we used to very much customize and harden servers back then. And damn it, I want one of those, Lee. And I don't know that they do the same amount of hardening as we did. We still have the CIS benchmarks. We still have the disastigs. And some places do those, mostly government contracting. But if you're not a government contractor required to harden your systems, do you do any of that these days?
I think in certain verticals, I think they do.
Yeah.
And you step outside of those verticals and they don't. I know particularly in finance, I think a lot of us will agree, in the financial sector, they're super not hyper focused, but super enthralled with that hardening of systems. Right. It's sometimes to a detriment that they're focusing on different things. I think there's a gauge, there's a level, right, of hardening. I think the challenge we all have today, regardless of the vertical we're in, is where do we focus our efforts? Where do we focus our hardening efforts? I think sometimes we get focused on things like your Linux kernel is out of date, and the Linux system utility that you use to manage your disk has a vulnerability from 3 years ago that can be a local privilege escalation. I'm like, okay, like I get it. Like, yes, that is a vulnerability, but there's 13,000 other things maybe that we should be concerned about other than that. So
I agree.
I think the challenge today, Josh, to answer your question, is focused hardening. How do we harden against the things that are actually being used as attack vectors in the real world?
Speaking of 13,000 things that we need to be concerned about, because we only got 2 minutes left, and we promised Microsoft patches.
Yeah,
go for it.
Yeah.
Is this a record? Larry?
It's got to be. It's got to be, because
what is the amount of patches?
Let's see. Microsoft Patch Tuesday from the Sans DShield blog here. The AI apocalypse is here, and of course the 622 vulnerabilities, not including another 427 in Chromium.
Good Lord.
62 rated critical.
So 10% are critical.
Yep.
Although if you add those two together, it's over 1,000, but still.
Yep. And my understanding is that while it was 622 vulnerabilities, specifically, and I don't know where I read this number, it was 1,990 patches.
That's just nuts. I mean, we can automate a lot of that. Well, like, for example, Windows 11 likes to just consume the patches automatically, but still, that's a lot. That's a lot to get down the throat of that snake. Or if you prefer,
I can't even imagine the amount of time that's going to take. Literally, like time. I mean, I've seen patches take 10 minutes each. Can you imagine how long? Like, okay, go ahead and patch, and all 10,000 of your workstations are now doing 7 hours of patches overnight.
Well, it's got. I mean, it's got to come back to the model that Claude posed, where you have an increasing number of systems where you're just clicking go, if you even click at all, to apply the patches, because you have to focus on the things where the universe will end if you break them. I mean, there's just you have to have more commodity stuff that you just do.
Yeah, and how are you supposed to read the release notes on like 1,100 patches, for Christ's sake?
What is
well,
this?
You don't. You have to use AI to do that. I think, Josh, you stated in this episode that AI is great in understanding that large body of knowledge that 1,100 patches would have an impact on. We as defenders have to be using AI to protect our systems.
Yeah. And like, I just made a quick pass at this. Like, so 62 were critical. There were 6 that were rated, and this is just from scrolling through this color coded and picking out colors, were rated moderate. Everything else was rated important. So important is somewhere between 7.8 and 8.8. 8.8 and higher is critical. No, it's important also 6.1.
Yeah, but you got to patch those. On Windows systems, you got to patch those.
Yeah, so arguably 614 of those, 616 of those needed to be patched.
Right.
Only 2 or 3 were noted to be exploited currently in the wild.
Until Tuesday.
Right.
Right.
Christ.
So, yeah, but the thing is, it's like, and then let's add on the fact, okay, let's say I get most of them, but then somebody changed together the 3 I forgot. Okay, 3 I forgot, right?
The median
gets me.
Yeah. You can't do based on CVSS score.
No.
CVSS score is about it's a guide. It is not useful. It is not it's
going to have to come back to.
It's an advisory
architecture.
In the one that was in the news a lot that I saw was the shim vulnerabilities that I talked about last week. There were many vulnerabilities exposed in shim bootloaders that were signed with the Microsoft CA for third-party bootloaders, and those were forks of shim that didn't fix the original vulnerability, and everyone's talking about it now. I'm like, I warned our listeners last week that this was an issue, and now Microsoft's issued a patch for that, and now everyone's talking about it, and they're not critical level vulnerabilities, but quite frankly, they allow an attacker to bypass secure boot 100%.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Couple that with certificates that have expired recently, like on June 24th and June 27th. Microsoft certificates have expired. Like, there's a lot of stuff happening with secure boot now that you have to keep up on. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a bootkit on your systems, and you have to patch and you have to harden against that. And patching and hardening is making sure you've got the new certificates on all your systems, making sure you have all the DBX updates that are coming from Microsoft, making sure that in between there, you're checking for those DBX entries that are not existent. Like, there's a vulnerable bootloader, but it's not in DBX yet. How do you check for that? Then after Microsoft releases the DBX, have I applied the DBX update? Like, there's a lot of due diligence there. And that's just one example in, Larry, your point, these onslaught of Microsoft patches.
So, and actually your due diligence, and this article raises another question. Is like, with this kind of a change in update rate, what happened to the time you had to like question whether we should be doing things this way? Should we be hosting Exchange anymore? Should I have this little server here? Should I be doing this to myself, or should I be outsourcing it to someone who does it for me? And I know there's other scenarios that are a little different, but it's like, I don't think the time to have that conversation exists anymore.
No, because you should be outsourcing most of it.
Yeah.
Today.
Well, yeah. Outsource the drudgeware. It effectively doesn't it really doesn't cost anymore, but the full cost is exposed.
Yep.
You know, and you're not going to get it done by Joe the janitor on between his shifts when he's eating lunch. You're going to have to pay somebody to do it. But still, it's crazy. I'm hoping we get some innovative tools to help us really keep, as you were saying, you know, the monitoring, detection, preventing, you know.
We need.
It's one of the reasons why I kind of prototyped that feature into the Fettle tool, right?
Fettle. Yeah.
It's like
very smart.
How do we use AI as defenders to help us apply patches faster, right? And it's just one small little example that I vibe coded myself, but I hope it serves as a model, right? And to Larry's point, and rightly pointing out all these patches from Microsoft, if AI is creating the ability to find more vulnerabilities, to create more patches, we also need to use that same technology to help us as defenders. And how do we do that? And how do we move the needle forward? And hopefully we're doing proof of concepts and embedding that into tools and aggregating those tools so we can patch faster, so that we can harden faster, so that we can detect and prevent faster. And I don't see as much innovation as, AI can find all kinds of 0 days and exploits and vulnerabilities because that's the cool, sexy shit. Well, the harder stuff that we do in security is on the defense. And I'm living that now.
I'd argue that this was a defensive action, you know, with some specifically Microsoft warned that this was going to happen because they applied a new tool internally that they
have their AI.
Their multi-modal agentic scanning harness as M-, which I find some irony in. M-,
right? Because AI writes with M-dashes by default.
And from my understanding is that you're reading between the lines here, M- found the greater majority of these vulnerabilities for them to address to improve the overall security posture.
Bet your money Mythos is in there.
That's great.
And GPT-5.5.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? That's a great place. Why don't you...
let's take us out. Thanks everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and Mythos.
Well done, sir. Well done.